Skype likes to say, avoid legal snags by telling people they're being recorded.
It tells you on the top of the call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Tom Merrick, welcome to the Wellness Academy podcast. Thank you very much for taking the time out to be on it with us. I really appreciate your time. So, yeah, thanks very much for this.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
We've been chatting for a little while now while you've been making your coffee and getting ready for the morning.
Yeah.
But what I am going to ask you as a first question, so your breakfast today looks like, I think, peanut butter and chocolate.
Yeah, well, it's December, isn't it? You gotta have. It's the 1 month of the year where it's acceptable to have chocolate first thing in the morning.
But to be fair to you, it's not like you've gone to your advent calendar and it's Lindor. I think you.
Yeah, that is
85% cocoa.
It is a bit.
I was just curious if this was. Is this a regular kind of breakfast?
To be quite honest with you, yeah, it is a regular thing. Not necessarily the peanut butter. The peanut butter, I was like, I'm just hungry this morning. I'm going to chat for an hour or so, and I'm not going to be able to eat something. So I was like, I want to have a snack. But yeah, usually like first thing in the morning. Well, not first thing in the morning, but when I make my coffee, like around 9 a.m., I have a bit of dark chocolate at the side, and like actually there is a theory behind it. Not only the fact that it tastes good together, but having some fat with coffee can help slow down the metabolism of caffeine. So that's why something like bulletproof coffee was a popular thing. I did that for a long time, but yeah, like it's a nice combination.
Have you come off the bulletproof coffee thing for a reason, or?
Yeah, I think so. This is where like I don't think saturated fat is bad at all. I think there's many benefits to it, essential for our cells in our bodies, but there's definitely like an individual spectrum on that. So there's the APOA4 gene, which is like the people who have an adverse reaction to saturated fat. And yeah, I do regular blood tests. I kind of realized I was just having too much. Like, well, when I was chatting to my friend Brian Carter or Liv Vite on Instagram, he's a very knowledgeable guy. And he was saying, yeah, you're probably having a bit too much like dairy fat, like saturated fat. So I just like moved that around, and I think bulletproof coffee was probably not the best way to start the day in that case. It was like 30 grams of butter. And then also it was just like I wasn't eating enough calories because I was just pretty full and satiated on that one.
Yeah. Do you when you say that you got regular blood tests, that's been something that I've wanted to do. Not so much the regular blood testing, although if I want a blood test for the reason I do, therefore I would get them regularly. Like where do you get them done? Like
I actually get it from Thriver, which is I mean, there's better options if you're thinking like I want to get the best data that I can for my bloods. But if you want something that's like easy to do, pretty good value, and pretty minimal effort, it kind of gives you like a broad picture. You can do like general blood profiles. I think you can do testosterone, HbA1c, CRP, so which is like an inflammatory marker, and all these various different things. It kind of covers a broad range. If you notice something was out and you're like, okay, maybe I need to delve into that deeper, then you'd have to use another service. But yeah, I've used that. I bought it first when I was at sort of uni, and as I've been able to afford it, I kind of try to do one every 3 or 4 months. And yeah, as I make changes to my diet, it's interesting to see like its effects. And that was one of those things. Like I had higher cholesterol, but again, I don't think higher cholesterol is a bad thing. It's more about the ratio and what cholesterol was there. And I noticed that as I was having like a significant amount of butter, like a block a week of butter, like it was a lot. Yeah, and then move that around, and things move back to where they need to be. So
it was for me. It's like I've been curious as to. So I've been training in CrossFit now for 2 or 3 years, and I'm on like an enforced break at the minute. After I think I took it. I think I just overtrained, and I'm not entirely sure. This is part of my frustration. Is I'm not entirely sure what's going on. But basically, I have back pain, just like long and short of it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I was actually quite interested to talk to you about today, it's even at the top of my list, on my list of things to discuss.
Yeah.
I've been recommended by, so one of my CrossFit coaches is a lady named Georgina Gabriel. So I'll give her a quick plug. She's on Instagram at the Hench Yogi, because she really is a hench freaking yogi. But she's beautiful and she's amazing and inspiring. And she's just started working with the School of Calisthenics guys.
Oh, yeah.
She basically said to me the other day that I need to work on end range strength. So she's watched me deadlift. She's watched me power cleans, snatch. She's watched me squat. She's watched me go to her movement classes and muscle up and so on and so forth. And she's just talked a lot about like me rounding my back and having like that classic butt wink thing. Do you know what I mean? Like when I squat and stuff. And she said that I should try end range strength. So she's put me in touch with a guy called Ollie Frost. But like, I'm like, oh, I'm talking to Tom Merrick, and he talks about end range strength. So I was quite keen to bring that up and talk to you about that. But before I do, I wanted just to see if you could give us a bit of a backstory, a bit of a bio about how you got into what you're doing. And like we've chatted about you wanted to open a coffee shop.
Yeah.
You got sent to uni. And it's like, no, Dad says uni.
It's a real personal problem, isn't it? But
and then now you've got a hugely successful YouTube channel, and I know that you've got programs that you do through that. And yeah, so give us a bit of an insight into how that became a thing.
Yeah, actually, the coffee thing is probably not something I mentioned before. But yeah, essentially, I was really obsessed with my friend. We were very obsessed with coffee in a nerdy way. And yeah, the plan was that I wanted to do that before uni, and my dad was like, no, you go to uni, and thankfully he had the wisdom that I didn't have then. Because I'm super glad I made that decision, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But yeah, I went to uni. I studied industrial design.
Oh wow!
Which is nothing to do with what I'm doing now. But industrial design is all about making the built environment more pleasurable to be in. So it's just, basically think about Apple or something. That's kind of industrial design. But as part of that, I did app design, and website design, which is kind of very relevant to my business now and what I do for a job. But no, when I was at Loughborough, massive sports uni here in the UK, there was sort of the national level team of gymnastics who were training there. I was unaware of it originally because I was kind of obsessed with bodybuilding, powerlifting. That's what I did. And I first went to uni, and then I got that standard like student illness of glandular fever.
Okay.
Or Epstein-Barr. Can't think, the US called it something else. I can't remember what it was called. But basically that completely wiped me out in second year. I was ill for 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks maybe, just like super weak. Lost like 10, 12 kilos in just the space of 2 weeks. And at that point, like there was this whole thing of post-viral fatigue, and you kind of want to ease your way back into activity. So I did some bodyweight training, and just for some reason, I actually can't remember why. Like I just never went back to the weight training. And then because of this, I signed up to like the gymnastics club there at very amateur level. As I was repeatedly told by the old Bulgarian gymnastics coach, he was like, "You're too tall. Go do pole vault." And that was like his input on me doing gymnastics.
It's a good job you didn't listen to him.
Yeah, but he was. This is a sidetrack from this story. But
I like sidetracks, to be fair.
I have like a bit of a beef with gymnastics because I think it's a fantastic sport, and it's really incredible. You look at any gymnast, you're like, you could take them out of gymnastics, put them in any sport, they'd be fucking amazing.
We talked about CrossFit, like
most of them are
gymnasts that come to CrossFit, amazing at CrossFit. Like it seems to be a common theme as a background. Like, yeah. So I get what you're saying.
But you couldn't take any other athlete and put them in gymnastics, and they'd probably, they might be able to do some things, but 90% wouldn't be able to do anything. But there's this kind of old school mentality, and it's slowly changing. And I think people like Niall Wilson have been very good at this on YouTube, kind of sharing the practical application of gymnastics to everyone's like to doing fitness. But they have the mentality of like, if you're not going to compete, what's the point? Like, why are you here doing gymnastics? You're not going to compete in gymnastics, then why are you doing it? Like that's their attitude around it.
Not Niall's attitude. You mean
that's not Niall's attitude. He's like, get everyone involved in gymnastics, which I think is great. But there's like this old school mentality, and that's what I got from that Bulgarian gymnastics coach. It's not that I didn't like him. He was a really nice guy, really great guy. But he just didn't understand you're doing this for fun sort of thing.
Yeah, because I remember a film. Like, so did you say you were 26?
25.
25. So I've got 8 years on you. Obviously, you don't need to say I don't look like it.
Yeah, nothing like day past 24.
Do you remember a film at all called Stick It?
No. Maybe if you say about
It had a girl called Missy Peregrine, her name. Believe it or not, she was American with a name like that. I know it doesn't sound real, but her name was. She was in this film called Stick It, and it came out, and it was kind of like the classic kind of teen film. She's basically a gymnast, and I don't know whether or not I'm pretty sure she was in Heroes. Now that I think about it, but
the blonde girl.
No, well, maybe she's been blonde, but in the film, she's dark haired.
I'm gonna be quiet now.
But it's like, so my point being, like, you see people in films sometimes, and I think about it like with Hugh Jackman when he did Greatest Showman. You're like, Hugh Jackman's an amazing actor. For Wolverine, he was like the most shredded, ripped, hench superhero they had. And then you watch him on The Greatest Showman, and he can sing, and I'm like, is he really good at singing and then he learned to act, or did he learn to act and just happens to be able to do singing as well? So this Missy Peregrine is in this gymnastics film. Long story short, the point they make is how unbelievably difficult it is to be an elite level gymnast. And they make the point in the film that there's like X amount of Navy SEALs on planet Earth, and there are less elite level gymnasts than there are Navy SEALs. Like, this is the point the film makes, obviously, not my point, but she can do all the stuff in the film, like and bar and beam and like some of the bodyweight stuff that you can do and blah blah blah. And I'm like, is she an actress that has learned to be good at gymnastics? I'm thinking that can't be possible.
Definitely not.
So like, we're talking, this girl was amazing at gymnastics, and then just luckily God gave her the talent to be an amazing actress as well. I'm like, where was God when I was in that line?
No, he was having a lunch break.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is the thing that I feel that in an Olympic event, a member of the audience should be selected at random, and they should do the event first, as just like a perspective of where the average person would be in that field, and then you should just watch the event happen. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense now.
Go onto the bar and like, oh, my hands have torn open, and then watch the gymnast go on and manage to just do 10 seconds, and it's almost impressive, more impressive even.
Yeah, I think like you never have a concept. I mean, it looks amazing, and then you try to do it, and you're like, oh my god, I don't even understand how that's possible.
Mm-hmm. It's taken me a long time to be able to do like a bar muscle up or a ring muscle up.
Yeah,
and I tried.
That's not a skill in gymnastics. That's like
exactly.
It's nothing. That's how you get onto the rings to start your routine.
Yeah. And it's like I tried to do it on a gymnastics bar, and they wobble, don't they?
Yeah, you get like a little ping.
The moment I tried to do it, I just, why can't I do this? And it's like, like you say, they do that the same way that you walk onto the floor to do a handstand. Like, that's their walking onto the floor.
Yeah.
So when you were at uni, and remind me again, industrial design, did you say it was called?
Industrial design, and technology.
Sounds
it's
great.
Full term. It drew pretty pictures, basically. Like, a bit of Photoshop.
That'd be why the things that you put on your YouTube videos at the bottom look so cool, and why your logo is so good, because you did industrial design. I
mean, I tried to, but yeah.
So you ended up then deciding to pursue this career.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why, to be honest with you. As I said, to be honest, I just kind of ended up posting and sharing things that I've been doing. And originally I was posting coffee on Instagram, and then I started posting some handstand. And it wasn't even handstand stuff, just like some bodyweight stuff. From there, I got into like Ido Portal, some movement sort of things. Like, got into that for a while, as well as the handstand sort of thing. I gradually kind of moved away from the movement side of things. Originally, it kind of excited me, but I think more the idea of doing it excited me more than the actual practice of doing it. Mm-hmm. I'm quite an analytical person, and the whole I kind of like struggled with the whole artiness of it. So I was always trying to like break down the concept of
and his stuff doesn't look breakdownable really.
I'm sure Ido has some process or something, but I couldn't like, how many sets of reps do I need to do sort of thing. Like, it doesn't work like that. So anyway, I gradually moved into the bodyweight stuff, and I started, as with anything I've ever done, I've always just got into it, like researched it, tried. I always want to kind of be self-reliant when I learn a subject. So I at least have some awareness. I can handle my own in a space, and if I need more help, I'll get more help. But I sort of did a lot of research there, talked to a lot of gymnasts about how they train, talked to the gymnastics coach, reached out to other people, and yeah, started sharing that online as an attempt to be like, don't make the mistake that I did. But the real reason I got into flexibility was, one, I realized it was an issue when I started doing gymnastics. I was hopeless. I think actually I was like, I couldn't touch my toes, and I was like,
This was the video I was watching before we talked today. Like, yeah,
okay, yeah,
you talking about your, because that was one. Like, I often talk to my students about the importance of flexibility. Like, that's always something that I've known about doing karate since I was 8 years of age. But then you understand, as you learn, that flexibility and mobility are two very different things.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and yeah, then I saw your video about how long it took you to get where you are, and watching about the middle splits and the limited amount of progress you saw for like literally years, until you learned more. And again, that's on the list to talk to you about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how
I had no real practical application or measurement or perspective on it, because I was just the same as everyone else. Like most people I trained weights with couldn't touch their toes really. And then I was at all these gymnasts, and they were just like warming up with some stretching stuff, and they were like getting their elbows to their feet in pike, and I was like, that's a lot different to mine. So I started doing some stretching in my room at uni before bed, and then gradually, as I do everything, read more, do more, learn more. But I kept that daily stretch about 20-30 minutes pretty consistent for about 3 years, I think, 2 or 3 years. It wasn't the thing that got me to where I am now, but it's the thing that got me to the thing.
Okay, what's the thing? So if that's the thing that got you to the thing, what's the thing?
It's for everyone, there's got to be that hook that pulls you in, pulls the fish in.
Yeah.
And yeah, doing that stretching, I was like, oh, I can see that I can squat now, and it feels better when I do some squats, and all of these, and it was very self-reinforcing. But I mean, initially there was like, okay, I'm just going to do this for 30 days. I'm going to see how far I can get, and can I touch my toes? But then, and I think that's the hardest bit for stretching in particular, is because it sucks. Like, and initially it sucks a lot more, but it continues to suck. It doesn't really ever get any better. You just kind of, one of the things about being flexible is just being able to tolerate the stretch reflex, or the pain of stretching more. That's literally like one of the key components to being more flexible. But yeah, it becomes self-reinforcing because you realize the benefits that it has to your practice.
What do you what is there anything specific that you do to deal with that stretch reflex? So you say that stretching, that's what's important when dealing with stretching. Have you got, because I feel like you might say, and I might make a proper fool out of myself saying this now, but I feel like, so the idea of, is PNF when you get to a position, tense and hold, and then relax into it?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, there's all these fancy terms that you could use. Everyone loves a good acronym in fitness. It makes you instantly more.
Don't say that. We can sound smart and knowledgeable, Tom. Just
yeah, you got like PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. That's more based around contract. So when you have a stretch reflex,
contract, relax, yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways you can do contract, relax. PNF is one type of it.
Okay.
The stretch reflex itself is a spinal reflex, and essentially what it is when you stretch, you go into position, your body's like, no more, stop there. It contracts the muscle, and that's the stretch. That's what it feels like. PNF is kind of a way of temporarily convincing your body that you're like, hold on a second, I'll do the contracting. That's when you do the contraction. And then when you stop contracting, there's a brief period of time where your body's like, oh shit, we're not doing anything. And then you can go a little bit deeper. That's kind of that's the principle anyway. It's a lot of stretching is about convincing your body that the position you're in is safe for it, and it's not going to die, it's not going to get injured. That's the biggest battle. Middle splits is a prime example. There is no muscle connecting the legs. There's nothing between the two. In theory, you should just be very easily, be able to go down and sit into middle splits, but it's not. There's a really strong central nervous system. Don't let your legs slide apart because bad things will happen. So flexibility is a lot about just overcoming that. PNF's one method. You have something else like PIR, which is post-isometric relaxation. You have reciprocal inhibition, which is when you would contract.
You're right. You do sound crazy smart now.
I know, exactly. See, big words, big brain.
So do you know Kelly Starrett is?
Yes, I do know Kelly Starrett.
So I had the massive pleasure of being able to train at his gym when I went to San Francisco a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And he did me again, huge courtesy of a little miniature video that I posted on the Academy YouTube about sleep tips. And he was so cool, like properly a funny guy. He's scheduled to come on the podcast at the end of
yeah.
More chocolate, Tom, yeah?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm hungry.
And so I follow along. I pay for his mobility wad, or it's called the Ready State now subscription. Mm-hmm. And the amount of times he says, tense, hold that position. And he says, tell your brain that it's okay. And that's exactly what you just said. So now I understand why he says that all the time. I quite like this particular stretching routine that he does. So you do it on the edge of your sofa, so on the arm of your sofa. So you basically do a lunge on the arm of your sofa, and then you do pigeon stretch on the arm of your sofa. But you're always moving your foot across towards the leg that you're stretching. And if it wasn't for understanding a little bit more now about breathing and the contract relax, I wouldn't last 10 seconds because it's just agony. Couch stretch as well is another one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, Becoming a Supple Leopard is one of the more early books I bought on flexibility stuff.
It was Ready to Run that made the difference to me. I couldn't read Supple Leopard because it was like a textbook, and I've not.
That was a bit heavy.
Yeah, but Ready to Run, I think it's Ready to Run. He broke it down so much more, and the book had all of the different stretches in, and I got a lot for that for my feet and trying to keep my feet healthy. It was an amazing book.
I thought Becoming a Supple Leopard was very good at breaking things down into patterns. Whilst I don't use a lot of the stuff that he talks about in that book because I don't necessarily think it's the most effective. Sorry, but it's my opinion. There's a lot of people who spend 30 minutes mobilizing before a session and are still not flexible. If you have to mobilize before every single session, then you're not doing a good mobility practice. Flexibility should just be there.
Painful. It's like you poked me in the heart there, Tom.
I've been there. But yeah, his ability to be front rack position, the overhead position, all of these different positions is a really great way to look at flexibility, in my opinion.
Okay, so one of the things that I always excites me when I do these podcasts is actually when I get, from a selfish point of view, to ask a specific question that helps me.
And why as well? Do you have a podcast?
And I can be like, forget everybody listening. This is about me now. So you just said then, right, that you don't believe, in your opinion, that what he recommends is necessarily the most effective. Therefore, by default, there's something you believe is more effective. Yeah. You followed that up with that if you have to do 30 minutes of mobility before every session, you're not doing a very effective mobility practice.
Oh.
Right? Which again, logically, that makes a lot of sense. So, and I'm happy to link this in the bottom of the description and stuff. You've got a lot of videos. You've got a lot of things. What is it that, if I wanted you to do what you believe is more effective, so I haven't got to do it for 30 minutes before every session, what would I do?
This is where it becomes challenging. It depends on your own personal practice and what it is that you're training for.
So I would I believe my squat position is less, it's not great. My left foot has a dramatic habit of always turning out every time I go into a squat position. I think I'm very tight in one hip. My hips apparently are out of line. And I know that my thoracic mobility is less than ideal. I'm basically broken. So...
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Okay.
My opinion on this is, number one, it doesn't matter where your feet point in a squat that much, as long as you feel comfortable.
Okay.
Kelly Strat also. You know, feet have to be perfectly, that sort of thing. There's not actually that much evidence for it. It's a nice thing. This is one of the things that actually bugs me quite a lot, is that this whole concept of perfect form actually can injure people, because our body is set up in a way that is very adapted to our own individual makeup. Our body is very transient in nature. And the reason that somebody is doing a movement pattern in a certain way is likely to compensate for a weakness or injury or something that has happened to their body in the past to make them do that. They're not just intentionally doing a fucked up squat.
Yeah.
They're doing it because something in that chain is messed up.
Yeah.
If you try to get somebody to do it perfectly, actually it's probably going to put them in a weaker position. If they still try to do the same amount of load, the same amount of intensity, they're probably going to overload or stress a position that could lead to injury. And this happens a lot. I've worked with many people who have been like, they've gone to somebody to get advice on running because their foot's pronating too much. Whereas actually, if you look at a lot of professional runners, they just naturally have a foot pronation. It's part of running. And these people have tried to correct their running to be like perfectly mechanical and robotic. And it's actually led to more injuries than it had in the first place, because that's not how the human body is. It doesn't necessarily fit into a box. That's rant over, so it doesn't matter. First, understand your own body. So, for example, your squat may look a lot different to my squat, and vice versa. Number two is, why do you need the position? What are you doing? You're squatting.
So like, for example, doing CrossFit, one of the things I've come to learn that I enjoy doing the most are the Olympic lifts. So power cleans, squat cleans, power snatch, squat snatch, etc. Squat, I like, again, squatting, deadlifting. And I think, well, I currently feel like there are some areas, that's why I wanted to talk to you about kind of end range strength, that if I reach those areas of my flexibility and mobility, it's like I step into those areas and the likelihood of me being injured like increases dramatically. So like I need to improve my ability to access those areas of my own flexibility and mobility. So what do I need them for? To stay safe and to be able to train the things I like to train more often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do it once and then it's like, oh, okay. Because like the amount of times that I've been doing CrossFit where I feel like I've been gaining some momentum and then an injury crops up in it, like it's frustrating.
Okay, so number one, my friend Adam Meekins is shouting in the back of my head right now that more range of motion does not mean you've got a decreased likelihood of injury.
Okay.
Mobility doesn't make you less likely to be injured. One thing that will make you less likely to be injured is the difference between active and passive flexibility. So this would be like mobility versus flexibility, which I don't usually differentiate the terms too much because it just gets a little bit complicated.
But yeah, and there is goes from 10 minutes to an hour. Do you know?
Yeah, there is a difference, obviously. But yeah, essentially, like if the range that you have, this is more applicable to hypermobile people.
I'm a little bit hypermobile.
Yeah, so if the ranges you have is greater than the range you control by like 80%, there's 80% of you should have 80% control of the range as opposed to passive range, basically. If it's greater than that, then you do increase the likelihood of injury. But apart from that, there's not that much evidence that I've seen on more flexibility being less injured.
Okay.
Flexibility works off the main principle of use it or lose it. And that's kind of governs everything in the human body. We have the SAID principle, specific adaptation to impose demand. If you do not use a position, if you don't train a position, you're not going to get specific adaptations to it.
Yeah.
Sitting on a cross ball does not give you that training response.
Yeah, it does. I do CrossFit. That's what they've told me.
What it does is it gives you a temporary pain tolerance increase.
Okay.
Which means you get a temporary increase in flexibility. So your 30 minutes of mobilization doing soft tissue work, blah, 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 gives you a temporary increase in range, but then you have to do it all the next day.
How do you get the long-term increase?
You have to use the range.
Okay.
But you have to do it in a way. So like, you say you like Olympic lifting. Let's just do some Olympic lifting exercises. Let's do a seated good morning. One of the best exercises for improving your squat, like your hip articulation in squat. Seated barbell good morning on a bench, wide legs barbell. You're building strength through a range of motion.
Okay. Literally, I've never done this. This is like, that's interesting, right?
So it's a lower back exercise, but it's a fantastic flexibility exercise as well. And a lot of these exercises as well, You've got to consider when we have our range of movement, we've got more force in the middle of it, less force at the distal, the end of it. So end range strength kind of can help us in the degree if we build more strength in the end range. That also increases the range that we have, but it also then strengthens for a further proportion of range. So it's like a kind of a gradual effect on that. Training through full range of motion or your own full range of motion is one of the best ways to develop range of motion, obviously, but doing it in a way that you're getting strong. So say you can do a Romanian deadlift with 150 kilos, fantastic. Why don't we drop that down to like 60 kilos, and we're going to really try and focus on pushing the range.
Is that like doing a J curl?
No, just a standard Romanian deadlift. So like 20 degrees of knee bend, and it's literally from there, it's all hip hinge. That will, you're going to get a decent stretch on the hamstrings. If we focus less on how much weight we have in the bar, we're going to be able to get a little bit more range, and we can focus a little bit more range of motion, do a little bit more reps. Over time, one of the most effective ways to build hamstring flexibility. Because doing stretching, if you think about our application to sport, in gymnastics there's the requirement for static stretching. This is the requirement to be able to sit in a split. In Olympic lifting, it doesn't necessarily make sense to sit in a stretch. We need to be able to use the range of motion dynamically and under load. So if you look at how these two people, if you look at a gymnast, you look at Olympic lifter, both are incredibly strong when it comes to relative strength, incredibly, like mind-blowingly strong, and both are incredibly flexible, but in very different ways.
Yeah, that's cool.
So if you want to do Olympic lifting, train like an Olympic lifter. Do some seated good mornings. Do some behind the neck press. It's not going to fuck your shoulders up. If you have reasonable external rotation in the shoulders, you can do it behind the neck press. It's a fantastic range of building strength through range.
Okay.
All of that sort of stuff. And then...
Got any videos on this?
I think I've got a video fairly recently entitled like weight training for flexibility.
Yeah.
In which I just talk about this basic concept.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. It was on the list that I saw earlier on today.
Yeah, there's many different ways to apply this. You can do push-ups with your hands elevated, so you let the chest sink down more, and then you're going to train that shoulder extension more.
Okay.
Split squats, another fantastic example as well, but done. So this is where how you do it also matters. Is like we have a split squat or a lunge position, and most people just do up and down.
Yeah.
You want to think of it as diagonally up and down. So rather than an elevator going up and down, you want to think of an escalator going diagonally. So you get that emphasis on like pushing the front knee over the front toe, get a bit of dorsiflexion. We're going to train deep knee flexion, which is that like bottom of the squat position of the knee. And we're also going to get hip extension, which is the stretch over the hip flexor and stuff from the back leg. And most people can do just that exercise and strength train 2-3 times a week, and they get pretty good benefits when it comes to hip flexor flexibility without even stretching.
Okay, that's another one I need because, hip flexibility might be a bit of an issue for me as well. Okay, cool. So another one of the things I was quite interested in that I saw on your YouTube, and it was a term that I'd seen, and I was like, I don't know what that is. And it was something you said you are passionate about. Ancestral health. What does that mean?
I think that means that we live in a very odd time, and we are so fortunate. I actually had this conversation yesterday, just like we were talking about how veganism came about, and obviously it's a nice idea. Very nice, the idea, the concept didn't have to earn anything, but actually if you look at nature, that I think we've become very disattached to, nature doesn't give a fuck. It is savage. You look at zebras getting attacked by crocodiles, even looking, my girlfriend's cat will just regularly eat half a rabbit that's still alive. Nature does not care for your empathy towards animals. And it's a very conscious way to live, and I think it's important to be conscious about where we're getting our food from. I don't want to support and spend money towards factory farming. I don't think it's the best way to go. I try not to buy meat from the supermarket for that reason. I'll try and support my local butcher, because I know that he's getting his cows from a farmer down the road that grazes his cattle responsibly in a regenerative way that's going to help the environment. It's going to fertilize the soil. It's going to make them grow vegetables better with actual decent manure. Like there's a whole ecosystem behind it rather than like animals in an industrial. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't like to talk about this too much simply because one, I just get a bunch of vegan comments, which I just can't be bothered to deal with. Like, you're not going to win an argument on the internet by just insulting people and talking shit in the comments. Like, it's just not how it works.
Win an argument on the internet, full stop. Like, just like you win an argument on the internet, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, or do you know what I mean? It's
no, exactly. I mean, the general election here in the UK 2019 was a good example of this. As like people have become more isolated in their own echo chambers. So like you'll be friends with people who have the same opinions of you, and you'll listen to the same stuff as those people who have those same opinions, and you'll get convinced that the whole world has the same opinion as you. I'm guilty of that myself. So
I find it quite fun. Like I remember the martial arts organization I used to work for. Like one of the guys who was in that team as well. Like I knew that if I wanted the opposite opinion to the one I believed, like there was one of their partners, like this guy's wife. Like, yeah. And I didn't like not that that's a case of like, oh, I want to go and argue with somebody. It's like, okay, I want to try and feel if whether or not my opinion is correct. If I go and talk to this person, I know they'll argue with me, or like like the opposite of what. And I'm like, okay, it's an opportunity to learn. I find that fun. Like I like to. I remember hearing a phrase that said, "The opposite of what you believe to be true is also true."
Yeah,
and that's fun. Like that's cool. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
well, there's the Nietzsche thing there's no such thing as fact but interpretation.
100%. You know, did you listen to the podcast that Joe Rogan did, where James Wilkes and Chris Kresser were on?
I did, yeah.
Game Changers. Like, imagine if you could find a way to get somebody like James Wilkes and somebody like Chris Kresser. But the idea of that podcast was to sit and go, okay, the middle ground is the place everyone wants to be. Let's discuss 10 things that everyone can do to effectively be in the middle ground.
Yeah.
And what those 10 things will do for both sides of this coin. Imagine how amazing that podcast would be.
I know. It's such a hard one though, because obviously there comes a little bit of tribalism comes into it. Like,
oh yeah.
Everyone likes to be on a team. And I'm perfectly guilty of this as well. Like it's really nice to say like, oh, you want to go and expose yourself to different points of view, but then you have to kind of be in the right mentality to do that. Otherwise you can end up being defensive and just not being receiving of their information, just trying to argue your point towards them, and it's a waste of time. But yeah, I think like just logically looking at it, how can you have people who are only eating plants saying I feel amazing, and then you have people who are doing carnivore, only eating meat, saying they feel amazing? Each one is saying meat causes cancer, plants are bad for you. That there's people thriving on both sides. Like this is not trickery. There's many different aspects to it that we're not considering, and you don't have to follow one or the other. You'll find out what works for you. But the whole, going back a little bit to the ancestral health, because I kind of got diverted.
That's cool.
Was just more about respecting things that did our ancestors good in the past, i.e. being connected to nature, being connected to sunlight, natural light, as opposed to artificial light all the time. Thinking about potentially eating seasonally as opposed to permanently having your mangoes flown from Africa all the time or whatever, or your avocados all year round.
I get you.
And yeah, just respecting the things that got you to this point originally. I think light was a really big one. I think that's becoming more and more prominent as well.
I can see why you were recommended to me by Max Lowry now.
As he talked a lot about light as well.
Yeah, like he's a whilst being a PT and having the 2-meal day book that he wrote, he also runs Connect Retreats, which is a mountaineering retreats company that does retreats in the Pyrenees, French Pyrenees.
His girlfriend has family out that doesn't. And he sort of lived out there and spent a lot of time and realised the benefit of it. It looks amazing where he goes. I'm like, that's beautiful.
And he's like, it's quite funny how this can be a thing that you need to promote in 2019, but he talks about like social media fasts, and there's like one of the things Kelly Starrett does a really, really, really good video on his YouTube where he'll talk about, and I think there's other people that obviously say this because these aren't they're not unique perspectives. It just depends upon who you listen to that tells you about it. But like the idea that a good night's sleep starts the moment you wake up, like that morning. So, you know, do you go out and get some direct sunlight first thing? You know, it tells your brain that you're awake. But I just, doesn't everyone feel like being in nature is better than not? Do you know what I mean?
I feel like inherently we know this. Like people, you know, what do you do when you're not working? You take a holiday off. You might go to the beach for a walk. You might go for a walk in the woods. You might go somewhere that's sunny because sun is fantastic for you. Literally charges the cells in your body, and like I think it's
Superman.
And you know, the Japanese have a word for it. I can't remember the exact name, but it's essentially forest bathing, which is like
I heard of this.
Been again like proven, scientifically tested. Going for a walk in a forest actually does you a lot of good. But I think it's hard to, and I've moved from the country to the city. I'm not living in a big city by any means, but it's not like London. But it's, you know, it's more built up. I have to make a conceited effort to go and find some grass or go and find a tree to, you know, to go for a walk, and relatively close to the beach, which is a massive benefit. But I think it becomes harder, and if you're busy, if you don't have the luxury of being self-employed and having some time to out of your day to be like, okay, I want to go to this place, then it kind of sucks. You don't necessarily have the chance all the time.
I think like the whole like nature thing, like nature, I think sometimes gets lumped in with nature equals green and trees. Maybe it's just me, but like nature is anything that's the opposite of being in a city. Do you know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, there's a significant difference between spending your entire working day in the office, getting artificial sunlight, kind of not artificial air, but do you know what I mean? If you can,
artificial air conditioning dramatically changes air.
Yeah, if you go outside and just put your face in actual daylight, it doesn't have to be the sun. Like daylight is daylight. It's natural. It's the body knows the difference. I mean, I remember going through redwood trees, you know, in and around California. Like I stayed north of California in a place called Petaluma. And like, you know, I was unbelievably grateful that I wasn't the one driving the car, because I got to sit there and just marvel.
I know, you just stick your head out the window like, oh my god.
Absolutely incredible. And it's just, you know, it's a tree, but it's like, you can take it for granted, or you can go, that's what this means. Just, it's hard to explain. I'm finding it hard to explain, but I felt very, very, very different driving through that compared to how I feel when I drive, you know, into Tamworth to go and teach my martial arts classes.
Like when I'm in London, I kind of get the same thing. I look at all the big buildings and the incredible like old architecture. I'm like, that's amazing. Like humans made that. But, you know, equally, if I'm in Scotland visiting family, or if you get to the Lake District and you're around those like massive mountains, you get the same, well, not necessarily the same, a greater feeling of like, holy crap, this is awesome. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like obvious to say, or maybe arbitrary to say, but it definitely is.
I think you're right when you say that we've become disconnected. Though, you know, it's. I was listening to Brian McKenzie was on the Modern Wisdom podcast with Chris Williamson, talking about how can he go back to living a little bit more like a Comanche? And then there was the guy on the Joe Rogan show, Joe Rogan podcast, who was on a TV show in America where he lived, like, I can't remember what it was, I feel like it was Alaska, and he lived off planet Earth for months. Like, do you know what I mean? Literally, he talked about how he pickled his vegetables inside the stomach of an animal. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, why would you try that? But it was like something that he found out that people did thousands of years ago. Like, let's go and see what happens.
I'm super grateful that I don't have to pickle vegetables inside of an animal. But equally, I think it's incredible that humans figured that out and did those things. That, like, this is why we're here, and we're so far to like. I cannot get over how grateful I am to be in a society where I don't have to worry about where my next meal is, or where I'm getting food from, or, you know, things that are going to kill me on a regular basis. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. Like, we've become very in the Western world, we've become very disattached to death. The only real experience we have of it is like illness and old age.
Yeah, I think like unless you lose a loved one.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, touch wood. Like thankfully I've only done once in my life that I can really remember. But yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Like we don't necessarily have a connection to it, and I think that's easy to forget. Like actually how impermanent life is, and this is the whole Buddhist thing of impermanence. And I was having this conversation literally yesterday in London. I can't remember the name of the book that the guy was chatting about, so I apologize, but I'm gonna butcher it essentially. The whole idea that life's impermanent, you could die in an hour, you could die whenever. And I think we lose that idea because we become so detached from death, because things have just become very easy. And this means we get wound up in these very small, minute things that affect us in much more dramatic ways than in reality they should. We get really wound up about, like, somebody took my car parking space. They ran out of, organic free-range chicken in the supermarket. I done some stupid shit that doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, you know what? We're unbelievably lucky, and I don't want to sound like a patronizing.
No, there's a Stoic principle. Like I follow an account called the Daily Stoic on Instagram. I think Ryan Holiday is the guy that does it, and it's like you could die tomorrow, live life accordingly.
Yeah, like shit, man. We're so lucky.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think
like the worst day that you're having, if you knew that you were going to die the next day, how much does that change the way that you live that day? Like it's like it's a cool principle to think about. Yeah. By the way, again, I should sit here like I'm not going up on my high horse. Like I have, my girlfriend.
As does everyone. Everyone's fallible. But if you make an effort, not necessarily to remind yourself that death is going to be happening all the time, but like, that could be a little bit depressing. But it's like, realizing that could be your last cup of coffee. Like, enjoy it and be thankful that some person in probably not the best living conditions, living in South America or Africa, has handpicked that a lot of the time, and that's come all the way. Like, just think about the process behind what's happening.
Enjoying your coffee like you do. Have you heard of a guy called AJ Jacobs?
It rings a bell, but
he did a book called 1,000 Thank Yous, and he decided to try and thank every single person in the train of not thought, but like how it goes from that coffee bean being picked that's in his morning coffee that he loves to the woman that served it him. And he wrote a book about it, and it was amazing.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, super interesting. Like, because to the point that he went and thanked, I think he went and thanked the people that keep the water clean that the company that he buys his coffee from uses to make his coffee. Like, he went to like an nth degree, realizing how many people are involved. Like, I think his principle was that he wanted to complain about the price increase of how much his Americano costed. And he thought, hang on a minute, like how many people are involved in this Americano? Yeah. And it was just, he also did a book about living life biblically for a year. And that, just as a he's Jewish. And if you follow the Bible, it's actually impossible to do. It was a bit super interesting.
I have to go and read. That sounds fun.
Yeah, 100%. So, conscious of like wanting to sort of wrap things up a little bit, one thing I always ask people is, and I think that you live your life in the physical realm as such, being that your YouTube and your business is like you're amazing at physical feats like the handstands.
I was solidly average, but thank you.
If you're solidly average, I do not know what that makes me, so I won't go there. How do you? Like, what are things that, if we take it outside of the stretching, are there any other things that you feel keep you physically well, physically healthy? Like, things that you value highly that you do on a regular basis, like a tip or a tactic or a habit or whatever it is? You're not like stretching.
Yeah, no, that's it. I think it's interesting. I think there's, I think it's important to have something that you can do to switch off. I think this often is alcohol and going out for a drink for most people, which I don't think is the most productive of practices. For me, it used to be training. It's not so much anymore since training has become more of my job. It still is to a certain degree. But oftentimes I'm like, whereas I used to train like 2 or 3 hours, 6 days a week. Now I probably do like 3 hours, 4 times a week, 2 hours, 4 times a week. And simply because I can't handle that amount of training, I've just got other stress in my life that I've got to deal with. So training has become, it still is an enjoyable practice for me. I love it, but it's not the same. Like I can switch off. I think I'm like, I've got to film this. I've got to share this. I've got to do that.
Yeah.
So it used to be training. Now it's actually golf. Golf is a great way. One, I'm outside. So I love being outside, and I'm outside in all weather. If it's raining, if it's sunny, if it's cold, get outside.
Okay.
Feel great. Which I realise is a very Tory sport, and I apologise, but you know, I just like playing golf. As I said, it's got the same sort of thing as handstands and a physical practice. It's like
your analytical mind will like golf. I can tell. Yeah.
It's incredibly hard sport, and sometimes it makes absolutely no sense, but it's fun to just practice way out. But anyway, I like it for the fact that I can just go and turn off and chat with my friend, be outside, be in nature. There's all those sort of benefits. I think if you can have something like that you need that little bit of time for yourself each day. That whatever it is for me, like I think that is where the whole meditation thing comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, meditation doesn't work. I've tried to do it, and I'm just like, what's the point of me doing this? Like, I've never really been able to get. Like, I'm like, I feel like I should be meditating, but like, So for me,
it's understanding that a meditative practice is like lots of different things can be meditation, can't they?
Yeah.
Like meditation does not have to be, I'm going to go and sit now on the living room floor, fold my legs into lotus, put my hands in prayer, and be like that's not meditation, you know?
Yeah.
There are a million meditation apps that the only thing they really, I've done some and really enjoyed it. And the principle is literally just pay attention to your breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the moment that your mind wanders, bring it back and pay attention to your breathing.
Yeah, I think it's just being present.
Yeah.
So, you know, stretching for me, we used to do that. I used to like do some stretching. I had my 30 minutes and breathe. And all I'd be thinking about was like doing the stretching, how my body feels in that moment. And for me at the moment, it's golf. It might change.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
exactly. And for me at the moment, like if I'm playing golf, all I'm thinking about when I'm playing golf is hanging out with my mate, hitting some golf balls, doing whatever I'm doing. Like, and there's nothing else going on. And that's one of for me, that's the key.
Would you say that, so like, it's interesting that you mentioned that your body can't handle as much training as it used to because you've got other stresses in life now. And I think that was something I learned not long ago, that the human body doesn't differentiate between stress, like it just knows stress. Mm-hmm. So if you're stressed at work and you try and like, as in hyper stressed at work, and you try and increase your training, your body sees that as 2 lots of more stress than it's used to.
Yeah.
Not have a good time. Like, and I enjoy my coffee, but I was told by a former guest of ours, Sebastian Kane, that like coffee is a stressor. Like,
it raises cortisol levels.
Yeah, it's a stressor. You know, and it's like, if you're stressed, you have to find a way to be unstressed. Mm-hmm. So is that your balance right now then, as far as like mental wellness goes? Is it the golf kind of covers both of those questions that I was asking for you?
Yeah, definitely. That's for me. There's the times to switch off, and it's not necessarily that I couldn't do that another way. I go, you know, sit at the beach and, you know,
which is
drink.
As you said, 5 minutes down the road.
Yeah, which I do try to do as much as possible. But like it literally could be anything. For me, it used to be training. I used to sit down in the morning. All I did was read a book for half an hour with a cup of coffee. That was, again, like, I just think that there needs to be that time. And as you're right, like stress is, you know, doing a hard day at work is like doing a hard training session in terms of the body's reaction to it. And it's not something I really considered until like when I was at uni. There was obviously the stress of dissertation or whatever, but it's pretty minor, and it's more condensed down to short periods, which I think is healthy. But then, you know, it's very common in the working world to have stress 24/7 all the time, and you need
one
to
of the things I learned, I think, so I was using, I've taken it off now. I was using a Whoop band for quite a while, and I would and I would do my martial arts sessions specifically Monday and Friday. It's 2 hours worth of teaching, and I like the Whoop band would be equating those 2 hours worth of teaching. Bear in mind, like, I'm a firm believer that if you're a coach, you do not train when your students train. Like, you can't train when your students train. You're there to coach. You're not there to train. So, like, yes, I instruct, but people have this belief, like, wow, you're a martial arts instructor, you must be crazy fit. Well, not really. Unless I train, being a martial arts instructor isn't physically demanding. Being a martial artist or training is physically demanding. But like, long story short, looking at the impact on my body of teaching for 2 hours, I learned from listening to a podcast with Brian McKenzie, is the guy, one of the guys that does Art of Breath.
Mm-hmm.
Consistently taking breaths in and out through your mouth, not having the time to breathe in and out through your nose, messes with your heart rate variability, increases, stress on the body. And that's why after 2 hours of teaching, talking almost nonstop for 2 hours, my body was stressed. And then, starting to put in a breathing practice is something that I'm trying to focus on to mitigate the fact that, I might not be physically stressed from a raising my heart rate point of view, but this kind of I've got a talk thing is what messes with your body as well. Do you know what I mean? Which is something I learned recently.
And just the mental stress of it. Whenever I do workshops, we do like 2 6-hour days. Sometimes we do a third 4-hour day as well beforehand. And like, I'm wiped for the most of the next week after that. Like, in terms of, I don't want to talk to anyone. I'm just gonna like recuperate a bit. It definitely is. Teaching is stressful. Yeah. So
what's speaking of that, then it kind of leads me into a question I like to ask. Like, what's going on with you? Like, what's the end of your year look like? What's the start of 2020 look like? What are you excited about? What's going on? Exactly, man. I've lived like 3 decades now, and a millennium and a century.
Hey, big boy.
What's going on with the Bodyweight Warrior?
More of the same, to be honest. I'm in my personal thing. I'm trying to work on the one-arm handstand. That's proving to be quite futile in nature, but it's getting there. I've got a goal of getting. Basically, if you do a handstand, the general rule is anything under 10 seconds is a slow fall. That's kind of the standard. So trying to get a 10
fall often. Then that's cool.
Trying to get a 10-second one arm at the moment, and I keep mentally screwing it up. So I get to like 8 or 9 seconds. I'll be like, oh my god, I'm doing this for quite a long time. And then the mind catches up with the body. So that's the main thing for me. That's been a fun practice. Something that's sort of never ending. And the main focus for me in 2020 is more teaching. When I first got into this, I was very much into one-to-one coaching, and that was like my main focus, and it still is a massive focus. And I love the people who I coach, and most of them I've coached for a couple of years now, so which is great. But as I've kind of grown the YouTube stuff, I realized that because I have coached the same sort of 20 odd people for like the last 2 years, there's not really much turnover, and I can't help more people. So I'm putting more energy and effort into creating better YouTube videos and creating something, which is the app at the moment, Tribe, which is something that basically people can start doing the things that I've learned and I use, and I think it worked quite well for the application we have, and sort of is more widely accessible. So that's kind of my main focus. Is like content is king for 2020. I want to make cool videos, I want to make fun videos, I want to make better videos. I want to get better at that side of things.
So you've got the app Tribe. I'm guessing people can download that on
on Google Play and App Store,
Google Play and so on. Website, worthwhile people checking that out?
Probably not really. It's on the website.
Like the workshops and stuff, like where do you post about those? Like, how do people find out when you're on and things?
On various social medias, but if you want to do workshops, workshops are on the website. We're doing the US tour in February and March of 2020. So we're going to be in Miami, Washington, potentially New York, Texas, San Antonio, Corvallis in Oregon, and San Diego in California. Teaching again, we did it last year. It was super fun. So we're going to do that again.
Sounds utterly miserable. I don't know how you can bring yourself to do such a thing.
I know, things that I do.
I know. And the Instagram is the Bodyweight Warrior.
Bodyweight Warrior. The Bodyweight Warrior or Tom Merrick on most social media should pop up. And that's kind of where I share stuff. And I got some blog posts on my website actually, which there's some decent recipes if you like the food that I make. I kind of put the ones that I use on there.
And then the YouTube. You're definitely a busy guy with the online presence.
Yeah, I try to be. I've been a bit lazy recently actually because I've been too busy with house renovations and other things and bits and pieces that have taken my attention away from that. So I haven't necessarily. I usually do a weekly vlog as well as like a weekly educational video, and I haven't done the vlogs. I haven't been in the mindset to kind of do that sharing side of things. But the educational stuff is always there. Every Sunday, new video on flexibility, handstands, bodyweight training, that sort of thing.
So look forward to watching more of them. So Tom, like, you are the absolute man for doing this. Thank you very, very, very much for your time. Hopefully, people can enjoy this as much as I have. Like, it's been a
it's a great chat. I had a good time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Next time, take care. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, you too. Awesome.
Cool. Right, I shall stop recording.